Is 3:07 p.m. Today is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. This is a work session of the Bluff Town Council. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Britt Hornsby.
Jennifer Davila.
Ann Leppanen.
Erin Nelson, serving as town manager.
Luanne Hook is not present. It looks like she probably thought we were starting at 4. So right now it's an excused absence because she knows we're meeting, but we'll see if she can make it or not. So the first item is the review and discussion on the subdivision ordinance. And I'm not sure, but Erin, what do you think the easiest way to do this would be? Like just to have you share your screen on it?
Sure. I will pull up the one you sent me earlier today.
So after I got through going over the subdivision draft, I had quite a few questions. I went in and if this is the one I worked off of, I made some just basic changes, like there was spacing on this page that Erin has up. Yeah, so in 50105, penalty for non-compliance, there was a period left off after the word divided in the third line. So I added that. So I can tell this is the one I worked from. I did not make any substantive changes. I just fixed some punctuation. And then double check this, but toward the end, there had been some, get the right one in. The numbering was off. So of course I've got too many versions. Here. So if you go this is my way of double checking that this is the one that just has the non-substantive. So on page 24, 5.0404 and 03, then nope, that wasn't it. Well, we'll just have to double check. There's one where they continued the lettering through 2 sets of numbers. And I think I've got it fixed except for the pagination.
Okay.
Then the one big piece that I went over and talked with Marcia Hagenfeld about today, and then followed up with the Hansen group. If you went through this, there are a number of places where there are requirements that the applicant has to do something in so many days. The town has to respond in so many days. Planning and zoning responds in so many days. The question I had for Marcia was whether or not all these required dates to perform were mandated within the legislation, or were they dates that planning and zoning chose? And Marcia said some of them were mandated within the legislative changes, and then some were taking a very cautious approach by the town, where the town had to kind of come up with dates for performance. And so planning and zoning took a conservative approach, because the purpose of these revisions was to make sure projects didn't linger. So somebody put in a subdivision application, towns and cities and counties were getting dinged because they go, oh, well, we'll have another review, or we'll take 20 more days. So then I emailed Jacob Hansen from Hansen Planning. And my question to him this afternoon was that just that, like, are these mandated, all of them, or are there some that were not? And he said, some of the deadlines in the draft are flexible, though most were mandated. We did our best to err on the side of being conservative in our interpretation of state law. Do you have any questions about any in particular? So when I went through it, I didn't have any questions about the dates at all. They looked fine to me, but I wanted to be sure we were catching all the mandated ones. So that was the second question to Jacob, was, did you catch all the mandated dates? And he said yes. The reason I did that is I didn't want us to spend an hour going through each date and cross-checking with the legislative changes. So if you have an issue and you have a question, let's bring it up now, because I'd like to do a list of questions to the Hanson group for next week. I did not have any on the dates. Did anybody catch a date or see a date that they had concerns with in that entire subdivision ordinance?
I didn't.
Linda, Jen, did either of you see anything that caught your eye on the dates?
No.
Nothing caught my eye.
So when we get through all of this and we have another kind of cleaned up copy, it will go to Chris McEnany for review, and then come back to us for next week to vote on. But in the meantime, Jacob Hanson can be available at our meeting on the 17th if we want him to jump in and answer anything specific. But I think the biggest questions were those mandates. Then I'm just going to go through my notes. Right in on the first substantive page, which is page 2, 5.0106. And as we're going through this, if people see something that I'm not touching on, just jump in when we get to it. I think that's probably the easiest. I know Erin's gone through it too. And so Erin, as you see things. But when you get to 5.0106A, I read that and the word easement pops up, but we don't have a definition of easement. An easement is separate from an alley, separate from a buffer zone. So Marcia, it was really good to work with Marcia today. Marcia looked, and we need to make it consistent with planning and zoning. So what we should do is define the word easement within this document, which would then alphabetically be wherever above between O and P. We plug in the definition of easement, and then easement pops up 10 times in this document and a lot in planning and zoning. So when planning and zoning does a revision of the zoning code, they'll need to add a definition of easement.
They don't have one in the zoning code right now either?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a definition ready?
Not ready.
Okay.
But I can substitute one in this week for everybody to look at and for us to look at on the 17th. But it is distinctly, obviously, different from an alley, different from a buffer, different from a street. And given, Marcia and I had this discussion, given that this is one of the areas that we seem to be struggling with residents, like what is a street, what is an alley, what is an easement? Well, we all know an easement's the legal right to access somebody else's property. We don't have that definition. When you get to page 3C, definition of an alley, they've defined it as less than 25 feet wide, and Marcia said that that's the definition of an alley, less than 25 feet wide. But the question that I had was the buffer zones on Cottonwood. I think those in Cottonwood addition might be 20 feet. And I feel like that's something that we should look and make sure that alley and the buffer zone are different concepts. And I just want to be sure that the buffer zone, and I don't know if we need a definition for that and exactly where it would go, because I don't think it's called a buffer zone. It's a zone for the public use that goes all the way around Cottonwood, which are separate from the alleys that run east and west. When you look at, could you pull up where it says ID?
ID.
Yeah, it was right. No, yeah. I go up to I, and stop at D.
Where it says administrators.
Yes, administration. Yeah. So this is the one I added to, because there was no period at administrators or administer. So I added that.
Oh,
When you get to JA, within the condominium project, if you go to page 4, where K is defined, I have a concern, and again, this is just me talking, so if anybody sees it different, jump in. Condominium is defined as a multi-unit development. When you use the word multi, which means many, much, or multiple, that would exclude the condominium process that we have for the CCC, which is only a 2-unit. And it's not a duplex because nobody's living there. So I think we should have a different word in a different phrasing for K for the definition of a condominium, because it maybe say means 2 or more unit development. Is everybody following me, or am I?
I think it makes sense.
Then the next one that I noted was on that same page 4, which was S, improvement plan. I don't know what the hell they were talking about. It made absolutely no sense because it's a long rambling sentence. So what Marcia did, which was amazing, she went to Gemini AI from Google and asked them to reframe it. So if everybody looks at S,
Which is now T with the addition.
perfect. What, I don't know, so what Gemini AI says, an improvement plan is a detailed blueprint, including civil engineering plans, outlining the construction of essential infrastructure within a subdivision, period. This infrastructure is crucial for, and I've got it here to hand to you, colon, and then 3 bullet points: public health and safety, human habitation, compliance with relevant laws and regulations. Next sentence, the plan is mandatory for subdivision applications and must be installed according to public standards and inspected before the subdivision plat can be officially recorded. That was amazing. I've never used AI, and that rewrote that whole concept so that it made sense. But when we get the document back for next week, everybody can read it and see if they if that's something that they can agree with. So one thing that I noticed is, because this was worked on in different meetings and in different sections, if we wanted to be consistent in what would now be U, which was the old T, it would say improvement warranty or warranty means in the context of completed improvements, because that's how they have it written all the way through. It's just a cleanup of how they laid out the definitions.
What was the change on that one? Sorry.
That would have been in U,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be moving the word means in the first sentence to after the word warranty. Improvement warranty or warranty means in the context of completed improvements.
Got it.
And again, it's even for me, it's kind of an awkward sentence, but it would be consistent with the way the rest of it's laid out, which is
Okay.
also true in what's now V, what was U. They've used a colon after land use application instead of the word means in application. And I think I caught all of those. So to this point, has anybody caught anything or seen anything they want changed? Then when you get on page 5, the capital B, okay, I'm not good with grammar, as I'm frequently reminded. B, so BB, little b, is the word are or is the proper grammar?
Big B, little b.
Yep, BB, little b.
On the right.
So that's page 5.
Which is now C.
Which
Okay.
would probably be CC now.
Yeah.
Does that
Public-
automatically change?
It does.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
public landscaping. I'm not good with grammar either, but I think is public landscaping improvement means, but I will highlight it just as something that we need to take a look at.
I think it is also because it's just talking about the landscaping. It's not landscaping and something else, and R is for plurals.
Agreed.
Well, that's what I thought, but I'm frequently corrected by somebody that lives with me that my grammar is not right. Okay, then I didn't see anything on page 6. Did anybody catch anything that they want to talk about? Then going to page 7, I think under KK, which would now be LL, there was a spacing and I should have fixed it like between A and B, water and sanitary waste. Okay, when you get to kind of through the whole document, without necessarily going through each piece, when you're looking at what was LL, now MM, the writers used Planning and Zoning Commission, they use Planning and Zoning, they use P and Z. I think for consistency, it would be good to use one, like Bluff Planning and Zoning, and then parentheses P and Z or Planning and Zoning, but they mix, because they're working on it at different stages, they're mixing those. Does anybody have a preference how you want to refer to Planning and Zoning?
No. I mean, I think you got planning and zoning, parentheses P and Z, if you're going to abbreviate later. I feel like the commission's implied, but
Linda, Jen, Erin, any?
I think planning and zoning is fine. It seems kind of cumbersome to see to say P and Z C if we were going to go with initials. So
you want to do variance means an authorization by Bluff Planning and Zoning, P and Z. Does that sound right?
Sounds good to me. That's how we refer to them, you know, so
Yeah.
we'll be the ones reading it most
I'm
likely.
just gonna make that change. Okay.
Then in what was LL, now MM, on the fourth line, they refer to conditional use, but again, the definition of conditional use is not included in the definitions section. It's included within the variance definition, and I think we should have conditional use as a separate definition. It can be referenced in the variance, but it should have its own definition in the body, which then throws off all the numbering again. What, anybody?
That makes sense.
Do they have a definition for conditional use in any of their other
I think in our
documents?
zoning ordinance, we have a definition for conditional use,
Let me go grab that.
but it could be that we don't have one in zoning either. I didn't have time to, and I really appreciate that Marcia
No.
was able to squeeze out time today.
Conditional use and a conditional approval both are part of the zoning code, but they are not defined in the zoning code. They come up in the definition for variance.
Can you create a space for the conditional use, and then that's something we should talk to Chris, yes, whether variance and conditional use should be in the same definition section.
All right.
So on page 8,
hang on, Ann, on page 7, are you supposed to have an A without a B?
hold on, page 7.
Mm-hmm.
Under which,
The water conveyance facility.
water conveyance facility.
Right now, it defines what a water conveyance facility is, and then as an A, as a subheading A, it has water conveyance facility does not mean a ditch, canal, flume, pipeline, or other water course that is used to convey water and used for culinary or industrial water or any federal water project.
That's a good question. Jen, do you have a suggestion on that?
I wonder if you could just take out the A and just say something that this does not apply to culinary or industrial or federal water project facilities.
Yeah, so just take out the A and move it to that full paragraph.
Yeah, make it a whole paragraph instead of.
That works for me. What about everybody else?
Yeah.
Good catch. Then when you get to 8, which kind of continues throughout the whole document, so we don't have to touch on each one. So we have planning and zoning doing certain functions. And under the first A on the top of page 8, under the chart, and just paraphrasing, the land use authority for subdivision, blah, 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 planning and zoning, may delegate any responsibility to town staff. And I think this is a decision that we may need to think about, but no offense to planning and zoning. I personally think having planning and zoning delegation ability to staff is problematic. But, and Marcia and I talked about this today, and that's where planning and zoning was stuck. Our staff right now is basically our town manager. When I was first going through this, my thought was to say, well, first, not just to maybe have a provision in A that says if planning and zoning needs to delegate, they should make a request to the council or to the town manager. Because I think it could get very confusing as to who has delegation ability. But the bigger piece is, you'll see, or you probably saw through here, that it says this task is delegated to town staff by default. And then also parts of it go to the town manager. And I think we need to be clear that, and I'm not going to say this right, so let's say the town manager, planning and zoning comes to the town manager and says, hey, we need to take applications, but we don't have the ability to do it. So town manager, you do it, but hopefully the town manager would have other staff to delegate it to, you know, another administrative person, or it would go to the town manager. But I think he might not be right. But if planning and zoning has a request and they make a request, either the council or the town manager says, yes, this can be delegated. And then who does it get delegated to is going to be the question. But I don't like by default, delegated to town staff by default. It's delegated. And then what's the language we use throughout the document for that delegation?
When you're suggesting delegate, like come to us to delegate, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, you know, part of it is once this, we're not going to have a ton of applications for subdivisions, I would hope, you know, maybe one a year at the best. I think we've only had one in the 6 years. I can only think of one, maybe two. But that also is true when you go through the document later, the references to the town engineer. Mm-hmm. So we need to have a phrase for the town engineer, like a qualified engineer, because we're going to be contracting engineering out. And we already do right now with Jones and DeMille on the road. So I think, while that's further back in this document, I think the town engineer is the same thing. We need to have a phrase for it. That I like qualified engineer, but I don't care what it's called. Do those two things make sense to everybody?
Yes.
I think for transparency, it needs to be tightened because I mean, there's just decisions about what to delegate, who delegates. It could become really confusing.
And I know that early on, we had some, with the first council, some go around about, does the council tell, you know, note takers or managers, like, if you're going to take notes for me, you're going to do things. But yeah, I think you're right. How it happens, it's not necessarily the task. But we can try to think about it and try to clean that piece up. But I think definitely we don't want everybody having the ability to delegate.
I don't think we want everybody to decide who's a qualified engineer or something as well. I think, well, I don't know. A town approved qualified engineer. I know that's later in the document, but.
Well, for the most part, it's going to be contractual for probably the next few years. So we could say a contractual qualified engineer. But we definitely are not going, unless we hit the lottery, we're probably not going to put an engineer on staff.
So on 8 in that chart at the top, can I ask just, so we've got under public hearings, optional for new subdivision application, then lot line adjustment, no, and then subdivision amendment, yes. What's the reasoning for the yes? That one.
On the
Just that one
subdivision amendment,
amendment.
it's required, that's a mandate.
That's the mandate one. And
Yep, the
then I
public
guess
hearing's a mandate.
that, when I type in subdivision amendment, that's the first time it pops up is on this. And then I just see it kind of like what you talked about, referenced in other things, like it's mentioned in the lot line adjustment. So I just see it within other bodies, but not as its own like, subdivision amendment. Like, what is that? Like, and it should, you said, does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
What page are you on?
So the first time it's on, let's see, just retype it in here. So when I'm typing in the search thing, it pops up the first time on 8, and then right up top. And the next time it pops up is in 50202 on page 13, A4. But it pops up just looking at the town. So it just pops up again here. The town may, in its discretion, impose the penalty of section 50104 and or require subdivision amendment for issuing building permit. I'm just saying, I don't think that's defined either anywhere else. It's just defined within these bodies
Gotcha.
of other
Okay.
things. So the next time,
So
then
you want a definition of subdivision amendment?
amendment, yeah,
Got it,
because
okay.
it seems like the same things as she was saying. It's just mentioned within material amendments. And then the last one is in reference to lot line adjustment. So is lot line adjustment in there as well? I guess that's,
Let me just throw this here. Subdivision amendments.
Yeah, lot line adjustment is defined.
yeah, I don't see subdivision. Yeah, one should be, but not, yeah.
Line. What was it called? Lot line adjustment? Lot
Lot
line.
line adjustments.
Okay. Got it. I will just throw it in. Oh, lot line adjustment is in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
But see what I'm saying? So
But
in the
it-
chart, it's referencing
But it is defined. Lot line adjustment is defined.
lot line is, but
But
not
subdivision,
subdivision.
okay, gotcha, I
Yeah,
gotcha,
so
gotcha.
and I'm saying the first time it pops up is next to lot line, which is
I
defined.
see. Okay, I see. Got it.
See what I'm saying? Sorry, it was a long
Nope,
way to
nope,
land
nope,
that
nope.
plane.
Nope, sorry. Okay,
No, it's a
so
lot.
I'm gonna add that to KK and then subdivision amendment, and then we'll just need.
It's-
Okay.
yeah. The other 3 application actions, the other 2 are fine, subdivision isn't. Simplest way to say that, sorry.
Battery low.
You're not getting juice?
Okay. It's a change or modification to a recorded subdivision plat, which may include alterations to lot lines, easements, roads, or other elements of the original subdivision. And typically requires approval from the relevant local. Okay, so I'm just gonna throw this in here and then we can adjust. So it's a placeholder.
You getting juice now?
No,
Are you plugged in good on your,
yeah.
plugged in good here? Boom. Bang. Now you should be getting it.
Oh, good.
Ah.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is gonna need review as well. Got it.
Got it, there we go.
Okay.
Then, if there's nothing else on this, then we move to page 9. And this is where I first picked it up. It could be even before. When you look at 5.1.08, F, there's, throughout the document, there are a number of things that talk about what I would call notice requirements. So in line F, it says, the appeal authority shall deliver a decision to the applicant in writing no later than 30 calendar days after the appeal authority receives the appeal or complaint. And I think we need to have, to review the whole document with notice being reviewed. Are we talking, so first of all, notice should be consistent. If you're talking about pre-internet email stuff, notice was always in writing by U.S. first class mail. So are we talking about written notice for whatever the notice is, the applicant or the entity? Are we talking about written notice by first class U.S. mail? Now we add in, it's very common for people to use the internet or the emails and just email something like, hey, I got your request for review and we'll get it on the agenda. Because now this time starts clicking for the reviews. So I think we need some clarification from Chris about what the current standard is for giving notice for both sides, and it should be consistent. And here's why, for those people who care. If I give notice to Britt in writing by U.S. mail, he gets 3 additional days to respond because it went by mail. And Bluff, you probably should get 30, but you get 3 additional business days, or 3 additional days to respond. If it's email, it's instantaneous. So does Britt get those 3 days or not? And there's also nothing I'm aware of in the code, and I could, I'm informed on this. I haven't seen a code revision that talks specifically about when you're using email to give notice in terms of a presumption that the person received it. Because if you mail something to someone by first class U.S. mail, it is presumptive that they received it, and then the burden shifts to them to prove they didn't. Email, I don't know that that presumption is there. So I'd like to have Chris clarify that, because that's throughout the entire document, talking about a writing, talking about delivering, talking about a decision. So if everyone's okay, I think that's definitely an area for Chris to tell us what the consistency is. Does that, anybody want to?
I mean, is there any other way we notice that's not by?
No.
Okay.
Well, it usually like the BLM, and they do everything by registered mail, and they may do that for federal regulations. But for our purposes, I think we just need to clarify first class U.S. mail or email and have it be consistent. Like you could do both, but we should be clear what we're doing. Then this is just a style issue. I noticed when they got further into the document, starting on page 10, 5.02, they begin bolding the subsections. So I think we should either unbold everything or bold whatever consistency is, but they begin bolding. And maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but I don't think the first 9 pages had any bolding. So does anybody have a preference on bold or not bold? I don't like bolding. That's just my personal preference. But
Just to change up.
Yeah, it's almost like they're doing it just because it's part of the considered complete. So they're just like bolding.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's handled with that chart thing later, that flow chart. You could, so might as well remove it so it looks the same.
Hold on, make it easy. It has been removed.
Okay, cool.
so I go all the way to page 14 where I have anything else. Anybody have things on 10, 11, 12, 13? And actually, I'm going to correct myself. If we go back to 10, the 50201 CB, so big C, small b, or big C1, small b. The very last sentence of B says considered incomplete until the variance is issued. I think that it needs to read until the variance has been decided upon, because
What I have in this one says considered incomplete until a determination on the variance request is issued.
okay,
Does
so I
that work?
probably made that correction myself.
Okay.
So is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
when they're saying it's issued, that makes an assumption that it's going to be issued, but it doesn't tell you what happens if it isn't issued. Okay, thank you. Then if nobody has anything up to page 14, again, this is just style, but to be consistent with how they started the document, when you get to 14, which would be (50202) 3. For some reason in 3 they used little hyphens as opposed to punctuation, and then they did the same thing down in 50203A. And I just took those out and put commas because that it's consistent with how they've done it. Is everyone okay with that? Because I think that's how it's probably. No, it doesn't show up that way. Yeah. So in place of a plat, there's those hyphens.
Mm-hmm.
I think for consistency, it should just be commas because that's what they've done up to that point. They've really put a lot of work on this, and it's so much easier to read it after the fact and look at consistency. Anything up to that point, then? Then on page 15, 50205, let's see if I, 50205. Okay. So in C, they had, they had put the 4 review cycles in bold letters, and I don't think we need to do that because it spells out the 4 review cycles. So I just took the bolding out. One question I had, if nobody has anything on that, moving to 16, D1, Land Use Authority. In 1, it talks about an identified geological hazard area. We don't have one, do we? And I'm wondering if we just need to put, that might be something that's already on planning and zoning's work plan for the
That's
future.
one of those that the state said that they could help us with.
Good. Then I just have a bunch of markings on mine about these days, but I think we could rely on Hanson and Planning and Zoning to have used the right dates. I think once we mess with the number of days for review, we'll be like mess with one year and mess with them all.
The one thing that I had on page 16 is that business owners of Bluff's logo, not town of Bluff's logo.
Yep, I had that too. I will make a note to work on that graphic.
Is that the one above the,
Mm-hmm.
I do like this chart though. It's very helpful.
yeah, I do too. Thanks, Jen. So looking at page 18, 50207, post-approval actions. In B, the qualification parentheses, so the subdivision can be included in the 9/11 database, in parentheses. I don't know if we need to have that or if it should be kind of configured differently, but I'm just, that's like, not sure we need it, but we can leave it or not.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting qualification. So the subdivision can be included in the 9/11 database. I guess I would take out the qualifier. I would just say town staff shall submit to the Geospatial Resource Center within 30 days.
Yeah.
If you guys are okay with that.
Yeah. And that's,
Okay.
so that, I don't have anything on 19. I go to 20, which is where I found the misnomer or the mislettering. And I tried to correct it, but I messed up the margin. So under 50209, lot line adjustments. You see where when I was able to fix the A, because it had been J.
Got it.
Someday I'll learn how to do that. Okay, going up through page 20, anybody catch anything else?
And do these need to be, do the 502, 503 each need to be on their own separate page, or can we just like move it all back? They do need to be separate pages.
No, they can all be moved together.
Cool.
We don't need to break it up this way.
Move that back.
Which will then change the table of contents.
I'll get all that done.
And then I've already made my comment about the town engineer phrasing. So I go to page 23 without any further comments on my part. How about everybody else? So that would be 21, 22, and 23.
All my stuff's adjusting here, but I know there was this comment in the street grading and surfacing. Do we have anything to add to that right now? I mean, there are standards that must be met when streets are being installed, but I don't know if that's appropriate to have under a 50301C.
So one of the things that came up with that I had noted, I tried to find time to talk to Michael Havocan on Saturday, but I didn't have time. So there are standards what Bluff has been using, I think, for the standards for development is San Juan County, the state standards. But I wanted Michael to review the roads section so that we can insert the appropriate language.
All right, so I'll just take this out, but I will highlight it knowing that it is going to need to be.
Probably would be Class C standard, I would assume, but I didn't ask it either.
Yeah, and I thought that, okay, so it's roughly 350, and I'm just noting that Luanne is now physically present. Yeah, I think that the street piece of it, we should have Michael take a look at, and I'll try to send that off to him tomorrow to see if he can put in the appropriate language. So does anyone have any anything else from 21, 22, 23? So I go pretty much through 28 before I make any notes to myself other than the town engineer language. Anybody have anything else?
I do not.
Erin, would you adjust the spacing there as well, or does that need to be a separate page because it's,
Nope, I'll move it all up.
So then on page 29, it's nice to see that somebody from the fire department is here because this will be a fire department question. So on page 29 under 50408, C, it talks about the spacing of fire hydrants, and I did not know if there's a code, a specific code for these feet that they're using, or if this is just something that came up. I couldn't find fire hydrant spacing anywhere when I was trying to clean things up, and I forgot to ask Michael or ask Hanson Group that.
Marks, no.
Marks would know.
There is a code. They put the hydrants in based on it, so they would know.
Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate it. So
That's-
Gary, like.
Sorry, I don't know more.
No, that
Welcome to the party.
helps because there were two other little sections that I wanted us to send off to Marks to take a look at that relate to the water facilities, just so we don't pass this and then we have to go back and fix it. I'd prefer not to have to fix this. So does anybody have other things that they want to go through and talk about?
doesn't it seem likely that our fire hydrants are already more than 450 feet apart? That seems pretty close together to me. Maybe not though.
Well, I think if we send these water questions over to Marks Powell and ask him to just comment and then send the road stuff to Michael, then we should be in good shape for it to go to Chris McEnany and try to get a legal opinion. I did use the Hanson draft for the ordinance, and because we have to pass the resolution for that, and so I did work on that, and I'll send that to Chris McEnany as well, so that he doesn't start from scratch and start drafting another document. Really trying to focus what we can get done without using attorney's fees when we've already got a format from a legal review.
So that wasn't anything that was discussed in planning and zoning, the fire hydrants. So this all came from the Hanson Group when they did their new ordinance. So that should just be a cut and paste thing that they've got from the state.
Well, since I'm going to send that other water stuff to Mark, so I'll just ask him to confirm it. But yeah, there was a lot of work that went into this.
Yeah, totally.
I really. Anything else? Otherwise, what we'll do is get it out to a couple people and then get it off to Chris for next week.
That was great.
So if no one has anything else on that, we'll move to 2, which is the review and discuss recreational vehicle draft ordinance. I put this agenda, I started putting it together before the public hearing. So since the public hearing and planning and zoning is going to continue to work on the recreational vehicle ordinance. I personally don't feel like we need to do any work on it today. Might as well hold off till they've completed theirs and actually passed it off. Anybody object to that? Then the next thing would be the review and discuss planning and zoning commission's proposed 2025 meeting schedule. Second part of that is are the bylaws from 2020. I think in my mind, because it's already after 4 o'clock and we have our meeting to do, I would suggest that we talk about the meeting schedule they proposed and hold off on planning and zoning bylaws, which are going to require some discussion, and also the committees, and put those on the next work session, unless somebody objects. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So the proposed meeting schedule, I don't think I even brought with me. I think what they're doing is proposing the loop.
I should.
I think they're proposing one
One work,
meeting
yeah.
and one
So-
work session.
And I don't remember which way it goes. Kathleen, do you remember? Okay.
I've
So-
got the email.
So what they proposed was one work session and one regular meeting, and I think it was going to be the regular and then the work session, but, and then they were going to switch it to Thursdays. And their idea was that they get a lot done on their work sessions and that they haven't had a lot of pressure, land use clearances and whatnot. And then they said they could always do a special meeting if they had somebody that needed a land use clearance, because they can't do those during work sessions.
So I guess, well, what do people think about that? Having them move from 2 meetings a month to 1 meeting a month and a work session a month?
It makes sense. We do something similar.
Could they do what we do and they'll have their work session, but if they need to vote on something or do something that's, requires a vote, basically, the work session could be expanded. Because that's a long time for someone who's waiting for a land use clearance or sign or whatever.
And this is why I threw on, one of the reasons I threw on looking at the 2020 bylaws so that we could kind of adjust it. That's a good suggestion. That's something we could put into the, looking at the bylaws, like how does that work? So that, like what we're doing today is we're doing the work session, but we tacked on a meeting because we needed to vote. So they could do the same thing with their work session. I think my biggest concern is if the meeting falls on a legal holiday, yes, I agree the meeting should either be moved or canceled. But boy, the week of bothers me. I don't feel like if it's during, it happens to have a legal holiday in the week, that's a pass. And that's just my personal feeling. We don't do it. If it falls on, I don't know. But I can live with it either way. I don't really care. I think it's more getting the bylaws in line with what we're actually going to do for 2025.
So what happened on, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. Looks like none of those are canceled. There's one every month of the work session, and then it looks like, or of the regular meetings, and then it looks like there's a work session. There are 2 holidays that fall on the work session schedule, but none next year that fall on the regular meetings. So that helps with that problem. And then I wonder if they could post it somehow that a regular meeting only if needed or something, to where it would be a work session, but they could have it scheduled as a regular meeting, but it's a work session if nothing needs a vote. So that people could still, so you don't host it as one meeting a month, you post it as two, but that's always canceled and a work session always follows that regular meeting.
I'd have to look at what the code says in terms of work sessions and meetings. But I think they probably should be delineated at this point as like, what is a meeting? That's what they have to post in public record. So like on the Utah Public Notice website and say I'm on record, they have to say what is a meeting. That I know has to be specified. Well, could we just, are we all okay with the dates they have? And then we can just work with sorting out the semantics. And then in January, look at the bylaws to make them consistent.
And it might just be the way their dates shake out, but like, it looks like they're in their work sessions, they're missing one. They don't have a work session in July and don't have one in September either,
Or January.
or January. So they're missing a few.
Mm.
So 3 months, they only have one meeting.
Yeah, and that really is not a good idea. I think that,
So I would at least have it matched where you're having two every month. But it looks like they're missing 3 months in work sessions. That would just put them wicked behind if you have a work session between the 19th, June 19th, and not another work session until August 21st.
yeah, and I think that the July one I noticed was the thing I was concerned about because 4th of July falls within that week,
Yeah.
but 4th of July is a legal holiday. But to work around the whole week, I think you need to have a meeting.
But it seems like the dates are early in the week for the regular meetings most of the time, except like in July. So July 17th must have taken the place of the one that would have been on the 4th.
Well, I can make this easier for us because I didn't put it into our regular meeting to be able to vote on. So why don't I talk with Erin with Amanda or Marcia and say, you know, what are we going to do with these 3 months where you just have one thing?
Yeah, because I
And then
bet
bring it
that's,
back to vote on next week. And that makes that easier.
yeah, because like the first Thursday is the 2nd of January, sorry, is January. So then they didn't do a regular meeting and they put their regular meeting on the 16th is what it looks like is happening there.
So I'll put this on for a vote with the 17th and talk to Amanda, Ogmore, or Marcia Haydenfeld about it. Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, then, as I said, I think number 4, we just moved to a work session so that we can start our meeting. So let's take a brief break, 5 minutes, and then come back. And so motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It's 4:10. We'll just mute for
Unmuted.
I'm going to turn the recorder on. And it is 4:16. Jen, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So it's 4:16 p.m. Today is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. This is the Bluff Town Council meeting. Roll call.
Linda Sosa,
Luanne Hook,
Britt Hornsby.
Jennifer Davila.
Ann Leppanen.
Erin Nelson serving as town manager.
The first thing is the approval of the Bluff Town Council regular meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2024. Has everybody read them? Are there any changes, points of discussion, modifications?
Motion to approve Blufftown Council regular meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2024.
I need to abstain because I have not listened to the recording yet.
I'll second it.
Or I can.
All in favor say aye.
I,
I also.
sorry, slow on finding the microphone.
So both Linda Sosa and Luanne Hook abstained. There are 3 ayes. They're approved. Public comment, there will be a 3-minute time limit for each public comment. If you exceed the 3-minute time limit without permission, the meeting controller will mute you. Raise your hand or put your name in the chat box if you wish to make a public comment. We do have 2 people in the audience. We have Gary Lichtenstein who raised his hand. So Gary, I'm going to ask that you come up and get closer to this recorder. Sorry, Linda. If that works for you.
Okay. Ready?
Ready. You good?
I'm Gary Lichtenstein. I come to the town council this evening as a concerned Bluff citizen and Bluff firefighter since 1998. In 2023, I led the Bluff Fire leadership through a strategic planning process in which we envisioned a fire department that meets the evolving needs of the town over the next 10 years. Based on these discussions, I met with chiefs and fire department administrators throughout the state. I learned about the many ways that small rural fire departments organize themselves to manage the staffing, training, equipment, maintenance, and liability and other needs to sustain an economically viable 24/7 emergency response. We did not have these provisions in place in 2023, and we don't have them now. Town council granted us a budget the last 2 years to address these things. Thank you very much. We're grateful. But when the town declined to take on the fire department under its umbrella, we stalled. We have no way to spend the funds we need to compensate key personnel, like truck and equipment maintenance, inspections, accounting, and administrative tasks, to name a few. Now, the county administrator has signaled that he is going to turn emergency services back to the towns. The plan is to require the town of Bluff to support our own fire department. I can tell you that the cost of running a fire department for a town of 250 is not much different than the cost of running a department for a town of 5,000. I don't have the numbers, but I estimate based on what other town leaders tell me that a town of our size can generate about $12,000 in taxes for a fire department. Liability insurance alone is $3,500 a year. Even if we ran only as volunteers, a tax-based fire department in this town, I believe, is unsustainable. Mac McDonald will tell you that we can get grants to fund the gap. I know of no grants that fund operations, except the SAFER grant, which will pay for staffing on the condition that funding for that position is provided by the town after the 3-year grant period. The bottom line is, I don't think this is a time to play defense and react to whatever proposal the county offers us. The county's goals and objectives are different than ours. We have an opportunity to explore options for designing, building, and implementing a 21st century fire department, whether it falls under the town umbrella or not. I'm here tonight to say that the town council should be taking responsibility and initiative to design and provide for future fire protection. Otherwise, you can sit back and hope that the options offered by the county will provide sustainable and effective fire protection in Bluff and our broader jurisdiction. My experience as a firefighter over 26 years is that hope is not a strategy.
Thank you. I would like to respond just very briefly to say that the council is not ignoring it. We're having great difficulty getting communications with the county. So I would appreciate, I think the whole council would and our management would appreciate, maybe we get together and do some strategizing about what our options are as you're talking about them. I think we'd much appreciate it. But we too have been, we're aware hope is not a strategy. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we are taking it seriously.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving to number 1, discussion and possible vote on the Environmental Protection Agency's government-to-government grant. I put this on with the idea and hope that we could just lay out any potential changes that we might need to vote on. I don't know if we do, so I'm going to ask our manager to let us know if there's anything we need to do tonight.
Actually, I would probably defer that to Malia.
Is Malia on?
Yes, she
Malia
is.
Collins, are you on?
Hello. I sure am.
Yeah. Is there, so I think we're all aware that you as the project manager for this grant have been working, trying to do some fine tuning. Is there any update that you would like to provide us with? And is there anything that we would need to vote on? So I'm going to turn it over to you, Malia.
Sounds great. So I actually, about an hour and a half ago, went ahead and submitted our updated work plan to April and Sina, our EPA project officer, in order for them to begin reviewing it, because April will be going out of town on Thursday. And so my hope was to get it to her so that she can review it and let me know if she sees any issues before she turns it into her people above her for their approvals. And so I had emailed with April and Sina later last week about our discussion of actually putting computers and office supplies, essentially, and desks and cubicles types of things into that work plan. And basically their response was, since most of that grant is construction, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and they don't necessarily recommend that we go with putting those, that I believe it's under supplies, and we didn't have anything in our budget narrative or budget line for supplies. And so as I was doing the energy audit on Friday of the CCC with Rocky Mountain Power, an engineering group representing them, they were looking at the windows. And we actually have a couple of windows in the CCC that, one, do not have an adequate fire escape. They don't open. And two, they are barely double paned. And so they are probably losing a lot of our energy efficiency, losing a lot of that. So I have actually reworked that updated work plan to include 12 windows that are just throughout the building. And I believe they're just some of the oldest windows that we have. So I'm not sure if you want to vote on any of that, and let me know what you guys think.
I don't think that we need to have a vote on it, since we've, voted to accept the grant when it was offered and the fine tuning of it. I think if they accept the updated work plan, then we might want to review it next week once we have a final determination from the EPA. Other people think any differently. I would just say let's defer any vote until we have a thumbs up or down on that revised work plan.
Wonderful. Thank you. I have one question for you guys about the water. I watered some trees last week and I am ready to turn the water off, but I think I do want to vote from you guys on that, because if I do turn the water off, I will also be turning off the furnaces, because the main reason we have the furnaces on now is to keep the pipes from freezing. And now that I've watered, I feel good to turn it off.
So if you turn, okay, if you turn the water off and we turn the heat off,
Don't freeze.
I think we need to have more discussion about that. So let us do some digging here. Luanne's shaking her head and
Yeah.
Well, you can turn the water off, but don't turn the furnaces off. And all that does is protect you if something breaks and you're not around and you get flooding. So you can turn the water off, keep the heat on so the pipes don't break. Otherwise, as soon as you turn them on, you're going to have showers everywhere.
So you can turn the water off, I think. We're all in agreement. I don't think we need a motion for that, but leave the heat on.
Sounds great. Thank you.
So we need to vote on it now.
Yeah, I
Could
think-
we turn the heat down substantially so that we are using less money?
Say that again, Jen. I'm sorry. You were breaking up.
Could we turn the heat down substantially? I mean, I don't know what it's set at right now, but I mean,
Malia, just so you know, there was a question today from the food pantry about the heat in the modular, and James is going to go over, James Van Reen's going to go over tomorrow to look at the modular and see if the breaker got turned off. Maybe you and James could coordinate what that heat is set at in the building right now and what it could be set at.
Yeah, I can chat with them. I know that we have, I'm going to be wrong on this. It's either 3 or 5 furnaces, and only 1 or 2 of them is currently working. And so we currently have the heat set for like 65 on the 1 or 2 that are working, just in order for it to get to the entire building to keep it at least at a good temperature. I do have a CO2 monitor plugged in at the CCC, and every time I've walked in there, it has been going off. Beeping. So if anyone spends any time in there, please have the proper mask and don't spend much time in there.
Oh,
Have
great.
you tried another monitor to see if it's maybe just the detector?
I have not. I've reset it every time I've come in, and then every time I come back in, it's gone off again.
Yeah, it might just be the detector. And I think there's water through the whole building still to all those sinks and all those classrooms. And I think you're going to have to keep the whole thing at 50. Sometimes I just put thermometers in there so you can see when you walk in, like how cold rooms are. Just put them by the sink or something, and it's a little easier to tell.
Well, let's have Malia talk with James, and then if there's something that we need to be doing, we'll be meeting the 17th or do emergency decisions.
Yeah, and treat the CO2 thing like it's working until it's proven it's not.
Right.
Thank you, Malia.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Malia. Then we'll move to number 2, discuss and vote the dark sky application graphic designer and vote on the nomination letter for the designation, dark sky designation application. So the graphic designer would, in an ideal world, get from Sarah Barak the application to put it together. The total fee was $1,000. And because the graphic designer is taking holiday time off, and in order to move it to the graphic designer, I went ahead and told Sarah Barak to say, yes, we will pay the $1,000, but now I need a vote to support my spending $1,000 to move it to the graphic designer so she could get started.
So how do you pronounce this company? It's funny, I've always just called her Catherine Wheeler when we've talked about her before. But
I would just say Catherine.
Okay. Motion to accept Catherine Wheeler as the dark sky application graphic designer
And spend
and spend
$1,000.
$1,000.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? Just by point of reference, after the graphic designer does the first run through in January, there will be some fine tuning that will exceed the $1,000, but the estimate is just a couple $100 more, and we budgeted $5,000 for the dark sky. So we're in good shape. All in favor say aye. Aye.
I'm,
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Then the dark sky nomination letter should be in your packet. Does that look good to everyone? And I can have that sent on to Sarah Barak as well for inclusion.
That sounded great.
Well, you can thank Erin for that.
Did you
My-
write that? I thought it sounded great.
It's a team effort.
I thought, yeah. I know, I thought it was great, and I didn't see any typos or any odd things, anything grammar-wise either, so.
Motion,
Motion to approve nomination letter for dark sky designation application.
Second.
all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Then number 3 is report on the December 3rd, 2024 UDOT Utah Trail Workshop and Active Transportation Update.
Okay, so that is mine. Our active transportation committee has been meeting again. We've switched it to Thursdays at 2:00. Our next one will be the 12th of December. At the last one, we had invited through UDOT to find the project manager to get an update on the RAISE grant. And that now is Brent Hadfield. They've assigned him to do it. He's worked for UDOT for 25 years, and he's the new project manager for this whole big project. It's a $12 million grant. UDOT had to match $3 million, and they just approved that like 2 weeks ago to do their match. And they matched the 9 with their 3. So there's a $12 million grant. The feds will have it back to them by April, and then they'll send out the RFPs, and then they'll get all of that back to get people in the area by June is what they're projecting. So it could go quicker, it could go slower. So the RAISE grant is 186 miles. So at this UDOT meeting, they announced it, and they were super excited because it really gives a bump to their whole new division, their trail division in UDOT. So it's 186 miles of planning from Spanish Valley to Bluff, and design and planning from Bluff to Montezuma Creek, and planning and design from Bluff to Monument Valley. So it's, anyway, they were quite excited. And at the UDOT meeting, it was up in Moab, Stephanie Tomlin is the new director, and she was there presenting, and Jared Beard was there as a representative from UDOT for this region. One comment that he said that I was quite impressed with from UDOT is roads and bridges and safety, and he said that this trail thing is a good boost for health, but mental as well as physical. And I was impressed that they recognized that as a good use for the trails. It's still called the Utah Trail Network. They're calling it a world-class trail network. It was funded by the legislature, and then it was started by Governor Herbert and Governor Cox, so that they repeated. So what they did at this meeting was they wanted to do a large skeleton, and they compared it to the interstate system. So they put the interstate system up for across the country, and then wanted to do that same sort of thing for Utah for the trail routes. And so that was what we did, was go on the highways to connect it, and then the ribs of the skeleton will be where it goes off to community areas. So it'll go over to a hospital, or it'll go over to a school, and that kind of thing. So that was the purpose of that whole thing. Moab will get they have that Giants park up on the north end, that dinosaur park that turns off where you go out to Dead Horse. They've awarded them the trail that goes out to the new Raptor State Park. So that will be an extension. It's about another 15 miles or something. So that's one of the ones they did. They were focusing a lot on art and education along the trails, wayfinding, landscaping, all of that. And then another thing that I thought was quite cool was there's a national organization, and they designate trail towns. And trail towns are towns that have trails running through them, but they support the trail. They have trail serving businesses, they have bike racks, the trail's used as part of daily life. They have safe highway crossings, and it's considered a public space, and then you become a trail town. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. But anyway, that's it. Let's see. Yeah, Talia Hansen is the new economic development person, and Rebecca Bonalli's the county health. They joined us on our last meeting, and then the regular committee folks, the usuals.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it was really great to be able to be up there.
Yeah, and I attended as well,
Oh, were you on?
Yeah, we just were quiet until we broke out and
Yeah.
did the thing where we identified, some of these break-off spots and other
Good.
parks and stuff. And Anthony Lott was on the call as well.
I could see Anthony and I could see Rebecca was on there, but I didn't see you were on. So, well, good. I'm glad you did. Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
To?
No, it was a good meeting, and I like, that they're asking locals what's going on. So,
I did send a note after that. One that I didn't put on the map was from Montezuma Creek, that new highway that they're building over to Hogan Wait. That's going to get a lot more traffic as it gets better because people will commute that way.
yeah.
And that people will be heading into Montezuma Creek more and more as the services grow there and stuff. But that's what they're looking at long term for the next, they've got 45 million with no cutoff date. So every year.
Nice. Could we get some of that?
We do?
No, I don't mean for So it is about 4:38. So I have on the agenda an executive session to discuss pending reasonably imminent litigation. Are there any motions?
Do we need a motion to move into the executive session? Okay.
And then to adjourn after that.
Okay. Motion to move into executive session to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation, and then move to adjourn after that.
Second.
I second.
Jen, you're not here.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
I'm
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. I'm turning the recorder off at 4:38, and we'll just take a few minutes to switch back and clear the room.